Right, good morning. I'll call the Green Mountain Care Board's hearing of May 20th, 26 to order. We have just one agenda item today, and it's an NVRH mid-year fiscal year 26 budget adjustment request. Our staff, our hospital systems, health systems finance team will present some information, and I believe may have a recommendation for the board to consider. There's no vote scheduled today. There'll be opportunity for stakeholder and public engagement on the presentation and the information. And with that, I'll turn it to Mr. Sutter.
Thank you, Chair Foster. Let me just get our slides up. So as Chair Foster said, the purpose of this meeting today is to deliver a staff recommendation related to a budget adjustment request from NVRH. Staff is required by our policy and budget amendments and adjustments to deliver a recommendation within 15 days of receiving the hospital's application. That's the purpose of today's meeting, and no vote is scheduled. I'll start with a brief recap of the request, what prompted it, and then staff's review. We'll review the relevant statute, rule, and policy guiding our review of these sorts of requests for adjustment, follow it up with a staff recommendation, and then open it up to questions. So you can see here, NVRH is requesting an increase of their approved NPR from $131.3 million to $131.98. They're also requesting, for purposes of calculating NPR and expense growth rates from FY26 to FY27, the GMCB increased their FY26 NPR base to $132.4 million and increased their total operating expense base to $137.6 million. They complied with our policies around submitting an adjustment request and obtain approval from their board. This is related exclusively to the treatment of 7 patients who receive high-cost medication at NVRH. Statute, rule, and policy, I'll just review these quickly. 18 VSA section 9456F shows the standard or threshold that the board will look at. This section states that the board may adjust the hospital budget upon a showing of need based on exceptional or unforeseen circumstances. GMCB Rule 3.401A outlines factors the board will take in consideration with the budget adjustment request. These factors include variability of the hospital's actual revenues, ability to limit services to meet its budget, consistent with the obligations to provide appropriate care for all patients, the financial position of the hospital in relation to other hospitals and to the healthcare system as a whole, and the hospital's performance under budgets for the previous 3 years and its budget projections for the next 3 years. The GMCB Budget and Adjustments Policy, Section D, allows a budget adjustment to account for unanticipated changes to an approved budget. Staff's recommendation is that we do not recommend approval of NVRH's mid-year budget request. Generally speaking, our positions of the care and treatment of high-cost patients is not unusual for hospitals and should reasonably be expected to be managed within their existing regulatory caps. This is in some respects, similar request to what we received from them last year, but staff does not believe it meets the same threshold of being exceptional or unforeseen. The individualized annualized cost of drugs for these patients ranges between $78,000 and $464,000. Contrasted with last year, the annualized revenue associated with each patient is about $1.25 million and individually equated to approximately 1% of their total NPR. So treating each of those patients under consideration last year could have put them over the enforcement threshold. Additional context, despite these relatively high-cost patients, NVRH does not anticipate exceeding its NPR caps, either total or commercial, by 1%, the threshold for enforcement. Through Q2, the hospital's total and commercial NPR are running below budget by 0.9% and 0.8%, respectively. If NVRH ultimately exceeds its NPR cap by greater than 1% and is subject to enforcement for its FY26 performance, the hospital could submit this information included with the application that we're reviewing now as justification for deviating from its budget order. However, we do not at this time recommend adjusting their current year budget. Similarly, we do not recommend rebasing their budget. I think it's more appropriate that NVRH submit with its upcoming FY27 budget submission the information provided as justification, if necessary, for exceeding relevant benchmarks, commercial NPR or operating expense established by guidance. The board could then more appropriately consider the merits of the increase within the context of its full budget submission. So again, like I said at the outset, this is a pretty short presentation. We just have requirement under our policies to deliver a staff recommendation publicly to the board. Next steps would be the board needs to approve or deny NDRH's request and should schedule a deliberation and vote to do so. In advance of this, board members can request additional information from NVRH to assist in their decision making. And in light of the staff's recommendation, NVRH could also submit additional information to the board to help them consider their request. That's all we had, Chair Foster. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Could you put back up the slide with the rationale for the staff recommendation?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I'll turn it to the board members for any questions they may have or comments. I'll go in order of seniority on the board here. So I'll start with Member Walsh.
I have no additional questions at this time. Thank you.
Great. Member Merman?
Yeah, I don't have any specific questions. I think this is, I think last year brought up sort of a complicated issue that there are these outlier expenses, and I think this brings up the need to develop a understanding of when an outlier cost is appropriate to consider separately. But I appreciate your analysis and thank you.
Member Teachout?
Thank you. My only question is for you, Matt, and is the argument here about scale that these large high cost patients, and it's not the patient, it's the drug, in the context of a smaller hospital? Is that the argument they're trying to make here?
Yeah. So our requirement under statute is to, and how we've typically handled these, is to review their request in light of whether or not they're exceptional or unforeseen circumstances. And these are kind of general, not extremely specific, but we thought it's very similar application to what we received last year. And we didn't think it met the same threshold that they did last year, especially in context of how we regulate on a total NPR cap in the annualized revenue in relation to that. But I think also, just to speak quickly to Dr. Merman's point, these requests have raised additional regulatory questions. We have, considering how our caps interact with, I'll say, incentives at hospital, how incentives are established with hospitals and our NPR cap. So we do want to take some time, staff in the future, kind of to develop a more structured policy around these sorts of high cost patients.
Great. Thank you, Matt. That's all I had.
Matt, just a couple quick questions. Do we have a potential vote noticed in the future? Do you have any expectation of when you would like to see this voted on by?
No, we don't. But I think just looking at board calendars, I think probably mid-June would make sense. I think we have a board meeting on the 17th that would potentially work for that. Okay.
And then has the hospital had a chance to provide information to you about the recommendation yet?
No, not yet. Today's the first they're hearing the staff recommendation. We have met with them offline. We met with them a couple times to discuss kind of the technical understanding of their application. Last one was last Thursday, I believe.
Great. And so there's time for them to give the board members information. And okay. All right. Yes. Great. I'll turn to the healthcare advocate for any comment.
No comment from us, board chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schulteis. And public comment via raise the hand. Great. Well, Matt and team, thank you very much. And definitely want to hear from NBRH on this and any parallels or contrasts between last year's and the criteria that's before the board in evaluating this, particularly the unforeseen and exceptional circumstances and why this would qualify. So I appreciate the staff's work on this and bring it to the board's attention. And I think that's all we have on the agenda. So I'll ask for any new or old business. And I will move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Have a good day.